What's up, my fellow fiends? It's Nim here, back again with more RPG horror stories. Today we're taking a look at two stories that both feature the same problem: metagaming. Alright, let's jump into those posts. I have a lot of D&D stories that I've been saving for the day I finally got Reddit. Seeing as that day was a couple weeks ago, this one is long overdue. This happened relatively recently. I had some time on my hands because my university was closed due to COVID. A guy I knew, who we'll call Ryan, messaged and said he wanted to start a D&D podcast. I know what you're thinking, but I was so keen to be a player rather than a DM that I just went with it. He said he'd sort out all the tech stuff and I just had to bring myself and a level 1 character. Ryan knew a guy who wanted to DM, but I went to high school with him and knew that he struggled with DMing. This is putting it mildly. So, even though I wanted to be a player again, I offered to DM, seeing as I had a bit more experience. Both Ryan and the DM immediately began shutting the idea down, saying, "We both have far more experience than you. You probably haven't DM'd games at our level." Okay, whatever, this is going to be fun. I knew what state the game was going to end up in. So I asked if I could invite my best friend, who I'll refer to as BF for the rest of this, to play with us. Ryan and DM said yes, and so I invited BF along and prepped her in advance for how interesting the night was going to get. The DMing of this game is worthy of its own post, so maybe I'll make another if people want to hear it. But anyway, back to Ryan. BF and I decided to play warlocks who served the same patron. We were a bit edgy, but the plan was to have that rounded out within the first session as we became a cohesive party. My character was a loyal servant of our patron, and BF's character had been tricked into making her pact. We were excited for how this would pan out in the roleplay. Ryan was playing a barbarian, whose backstory had something about being kicked out of a clan for being too powerful. Party edginess increases. The session and the podcast recording began with us entering a town that had been ransacked by a force unknown to our characters at the time. After fighting off some kobolds, we took a long rest and began to roleplay to establish our traits. My character was very into contracts and tricking people into them, and that was the premise for how BF's character got involved with our patron. I began trying to get some of the townspeople to sell their souls to my patron, and a lot of them were buying it. When all of a sudden Ryan declares, "I walk into the room and tell you to stop what you're doing." I was intrigued. Did Ryan's character have some big news to share? Or lead on the case? Apparently his character knew there was something amiss from outside the room and figured I was trying to scam the townspeople. I was irked by this metagaming, but I didn't want to slow down the session by spending all my time being evil. And I figured it could be a good point of roleplay tension between our characters if he knew what I was up to. Alas, things only got worse from here. The next major offense came when we were investigating the town hall. BF found a trap above the entrance to the building, and Ryan spotted it too. Neither of them told me about it though, and both of them stood back to let me go first. I love this kind of roleplay where you know something your character doesn't, so I walked straight in and triggered the trap, taking some damage from a boiling pot of water above the door. Ryan found it hilarious that I, the player, had been dumb enough to go in where I knew there was a trap. I think you can see where the problem is here. In that same town hall, I discovered that the floorboards were extremely weak, and to get my own back against the other two, I didn't tell them about it. Ryan was going into this room first until my perception check revealed the danger. At this point, he immediately told the DM that his character was not going into the room. BF asked Ryan why his character has suddenly stopped, and he replied, "I felt like I needed to search the floor." I point out that he had already done that with his perception check. "No, that was just me casually looking around. Now I'm searching for traps." BF and I began laughing about this on a separate chat, and I decided to just go with it since we were having a good time watching the metagaming unfold. Later, the DM, who had been dealing with some pretty problematic themes already, decided to allow Ryan to simp over the mayor's daughter, saving her with his impressive strength, etc., etc. That night, BF and I took first watch, and while Ryan was sleeping, we made a plan to trick the mayor's daughter into signing one of my evil contracts. No sooner had we spoken the words when Ryan cut across us saying, "I wake up and attack them." I actually laughed out loud in the voice chat thinking he was joking. But no, I was wrong. The DM simply allowed his character to wake up, apparently having eavesdropped in his sleep. BF and I were having such a good time of it in our private chat that I just had my character apologize and we moved on. Ironically, at the end of the night, we got a message from Ryan saying that the recording had corrupted and we'd have to run the session again. Both BF and I declined, but I did offer to DM for them if they ever wanted it. Both BFs and my characters were edgy, but at least we weren't omniscient. Somebody please tell Ryan how sleeping works, because I don't know if he's ever experienced it. Ugh. This type of metagaming is so frustrating. You're playing a role-playing game. The whole point is to play as your character. That's part of the fun and what makes it different from just playing a video game or something. The fact that Ryan deliberately uses it to spoil the OP's character interactions reminds me of last week's problem player. He seems like the kind of person that always has to have the spotlight, even if it makes absolutely no sense for his character to be there. But it's not just the player that's the problem. Why did the DM go along with him? I would definitely be interested in a follow-up post from OP about this guy's tease DMing style. He does know he's allowed to veto player actions, right? At least the OP had a good time playing, even if it wasn't for the reason the DM intended, and it didn't end up with an entertaining story for all of us. Anyway, let's get into our second story of the day. It's going to involve spoilers for 5e's Curse of Strahd campaign, so if you haven't played it yet, I suggest you skip to this time in the video. I'm gonna put a non-spoilery summary there. The story begins when I DM'd Curse of Strahd for a group of randoms on Roll20. After inviting them to the game, I didn't touch the game until before the first session because, hey, I have stuff to do, right? I told them to roll up level 4 characters, we were skipping Death House, and just to be ready for the first game. The one character I had some reservations for was a chaotic neutral tiefling Pact of the Blade warlock named Ryoth Hell's Edge. I was tempted to kick the offending party from the game, but held off because, hey, it could be an ironic take, right? I was very, very wrong. The story began in a tavern. I had them all describe themselves, and he says something along the lines of, "Looking in the corner, you see a dark, hooded figure dressed in flowing robes, holding a katana behind his back. He gives off an aura of power and fear, so much that the rest of the people in the inn are seated away from him and try to ignore his presence." Paraphrased, obviously. Well then, I move the story along. They meet the Vistani, find Kolyan's letter, get their cards read, and arrive at the village of Barovia. Heading to the tavern there, they meet Ismark, and based on the letter, agree to help him move Arena somewhere safe. When they meet her, he PMs me this. "I take her aside, get down on my knee, put my katana in my hands, and tell her, 'Tatiana, I pledge my loyalty to you. Strahd will never take you as long as I'm alive. You have my word and honor.'" For those of you who don't know, Tatiana is the previous incarnation of Arena and Strahd's love. I thought it was just a mix-up of names, so I didn't push any further. In hindsight, it was a red flag. Agreeing to bury Kolyan, who recently died, they take the body along, when they bump into the night hag who abducts a little boy from his house. While the rest of the party tries to attack, he holds them back and tells them, "This lady is far too powerful for us, hold back!" Up to this point, I had described her as an old woman. Whatever, maybe I just laid the description on too thick. They head onto the church, and before even confronting the priest, he tells me, I open the first door to the right and throw open the trapdoor, beckoning the party through. The trapdoor is supposed to be hidden. After defeating the vampire spawn, the players agree to take her into the walled city. We end the session and I PM the player, asking him to please not reveal any plot points. He agrees and I think all is well. The next week they travel to Vallaki and head to the inn, meeting Rictavio and the Were-Ravens. He takes aside Rictavio and once again, though more subtly this time, hints that he knows his true identity, the vampire hunter von Richten, and that he should keep his pet, the tiger, locked up. After escorting Irina to the church, they learn about the theft of the bones and track them to the coffin maker's shop. When looking, he tells everyone not to go in the room the book has 5 vampires spawn in. I had cut the number to 2, but that's beside the point. They find the bones and return them to the church, meet the Baron, and go through the Festival of the Rising Sun without much incident. Then, on their way out, they have a run-in with Strahd, who invites them to his castle for dinner. After dinner, he takes each character aside and tries to manipulate them into serving him instead of the group. All the players except one decline. Points if you can guess who and why. The next session, when we did the Wizard of Wines, he wasn't here, so it went pretty smoothly for the most part. After this, the party is determined to stamp out the hags they saw stealing the kid earlier, so they sneak after her out of Barovia and into Old Bone Grinder. Thinking they would die, the warlock turns on the party. In the books, the hags are very, very strong, but I had nerfed them enough that the party, now level 6, could take them on. After killing the hags, they turned on the warlock and killed him. He rage quit the game and later messaged me, "They died too easily," as well as some more expletives and expressions about my race and sexuality. So, for those of you who skipped the story, one player has obviously read the campaign module and keeps using that knowledge in-game and spoils it for the other players at multiple points. He continues to do so even after the DM talks to him about it out of game. It ends with that player betraying the party due to prior knowledge, and then he rage quits because the DM changed the encounter. Oh boy, so never spoil things for the other players. I've played in many games that were run from modules, and many times they've been adventures that I've played or ran before. So I absolutely do understand the temptation to avoid something that I know would hurt my character or be bad for the party. But I like to think that I've gotten pretty good about playing in character so as not to ruin the surprise for the other players. Some of my favorite adventuring moments happened because we didn't know what we were up against and got in over our heads. I don't want to take that away from someone I'm playing with. He could have used his knowledge of the module to enhance his character and really ground him in the world and the feeling of Barovia. But instead, he just took away from the scary unknown of the whole setting. I love how he got his comeuppance in the end, though. Of course the DM changed something. This wasn't Adventurers League. Anyway, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye!